just hope my phone is not on. Or am I?
Call it to order.
So
Yes, you're
I'll
getting
pass
dirty
on.
looks.
Bye.
Okay. Good evening. I call the meeting of the City Council of the City of Pacifica to order for January 26th. February 9th, 2015. 2 weeks behind. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Keener.
Here.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Here.
Councilmember Nyhart.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Degree.
I didn't take anything.
Mayor Pro Tem Degree.
Present.
Mayor Irvin.
Present. The salute to the flag will be led by Councilmember Keener.
Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have a closed session report? Thank you. This brings us to the consent calendar, and at the request of the city clerk, we are pulling item number 2. It will be available at the next council meeting. Persons wishing to address the council on any consent calendar item may do so at this time. Each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes, and those wishing to address the council on any item listed on the agenda should submit a speaker card. You can get a yellow card in the back, and they'll bring it up for us. Items on the consent calendar will be adopted by one motion unless a council member or person in the audience requests before the vote on the motion to have an item discussed under the consideration portion of the agenda. Time limits on comments is 3 minutes or less. Anyone?
So I wanted to pull 4 for a comment.
I think you could, if you're just going to make a comment on the consent, you can do so without pulling it?
Yes, you can.
Okay, is that okay? All right, great, thanks. Okay, so you can...
Are we doing it?
Yeah.
Just to comment on item number 4, Donna Javier Trust, and just wanted to comment that it's like the Ray Davies Trust. It's such a nice thing that residents, apparently for a long time residents, who most of us, I don't think, know this person, just chooses to turn over some money to the city that they care for. So we have a wonderful community, and this is another example of how the residents are caring for each other.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem Degree. Anybody else would like to make any comments?
One is for you.
No.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move approval of the consent calendar minus item number 2.
And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, and please vote. Okay. And that passes 5-0. Okay. Now we have a very special presentation, a proclamation by the city. This is in honor of Elaine Larson, who passed away suddenly several weeks ago, and she was an incredible individual in our community, and she provided a great deal of comfort to many. She educated and informed us for many, many years. I think she was here for 26 years doing investigative reporting and as an editor of the Tribune and as a citizen that so many of us loved. And I'm going to go ahead and read a proclamation in tribute to Elaine Larson. Elaine lived in Pacifica and was a longtime employee of the Pacifica Tribune, ultimately holding the position of editor and publisher. And Elaine Larson was raised in Palo Alto and San Jose, attending De Anza College, where she met her husband, Jim Carson, and went on to earn a communications degree from UC Berkeley and a master's degree in journalism from Northwestern. And Elaine was hired by then Tribune owner and publisher Bill Drake in 1987 as a reporter, covering education news. She reported extensively on all things relating to Pacifica, establishing a reputation as a fair, comprehensive, and compassionate writer. During her tenure, the Pacifica Tribune earned various awards and commendations from the California Newspaper Publishers Association. and the San Francisco Peninsula Press Club for its detailed level of community news coverage. And Elaine was honored by community groups such as the Pacifica Community Television for her personal dedication to the city of Pacifica. And Elaine Larson established the comprehensive and popular police beat, which represented one of her favorite beats to cover during her career. And Elaine was widely known to reach out to various factors within the city of Pacifica and make every effort to faithfully report all sides of every controversial topic. And whereas Elaine Larson passed away unexpectedly and entirely too prematurely on January 12th, 2015. Now therefore be it resolved that the City of Pacifica honors and recognizes Elaine Larson for her career as a journalist in Pacifica and her longtime dedication to the Pacifica Tribune. She will be greatly missed by her friends, family, and readers of the community newspaper, where she worked for 26 years, or half her life. Tonight we have a special guest in the audience. We have her husband, Jim Carson, and I'd like to ask you, Jim, if you would like to come up to the podium and say a few words, and then, yes, right here. And I think some of the council members would also like to say a few words to you. So.
I wasn't expecting to say a few words.
You don't have to say anything
It's
at
a
all.
surprise, but thank you very much for the award. Elaine really loved Pacifica. We came into town and her feet landed on the ground running, and she never slowed down till the day that she left the Tribune. And even then she couldn't. She always read up on it and wanted to know what was going on, and she'd promise us sometimes that she wouldn't care about it, and she's had enough, etc., like almost everybody else in town. And then she would, of course, couldn't stand it. She had to find out what was going on. So.
Right.
Anyways, thank you very much.
Well, thank
We
you.
really appreciate this.
And we're thinking of you, and our heart aches for you. And she made this city the incredible place that it is. And she she had so much admiration and respect from the people of Pacifica, and there was such deep gratitude and love from the people. So I hope you realize how much that she's loved, and we will miss her dearly.
Oh,
And
thank you very
I don't
much.
know if any of the council members would like to say anything? Councilmember Degree?
I just want to say again that having a local newspaper is such a treasure, so we really appreciate that Elaine hung in there through thick and thin. We owe it. It's great to have a local paper, so may we all honor that paper as well. Thank you.
Councilmember O'Neill?
I want to echo what Sue said, is that when you go over the hill and you talk to other city council members, they have said that you are so lucky that we have a local paper here, that the closest local paper they have is the San Mateo Times, which is owned by the Mercury News, which is owned by somebody out of Denver. So, and the Tribune is owned by the same organization, however, it is local. I know I know Cal Hinton once told me that he always read page 2 first because he wanted to see how many votes he lost. But it is a treasure, and she was a treasure in Pacifica. Anytime you went in, she had time to visit, shoot the breeze, and talk about whatever. So I will miss her. I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Neihardt?
Well, I'm going to say the same thing that I said at the memorial service, that when you listen to so many people talk about Elaine, she was constantly mentoring, constantly helping people. And to say these words in the room where I met her, because she used to sit here at every council meeting and actually report live when we weren't on TV and all of that kind of stuff. It was amazing to see how she encouraged people. The whole wastewater treatment plant, the new Calera, the Pacificans United for Positive Solutions. I was asked by a couple of people in the audience what PUPS was, and it was the response to cows at the time. And there was always something that Elaine was engaged in, and she just wanted everybody to like start working together and kind of stop fighting and think about how we can work out our issues. But in teaching a lesson in the final, I mean, she was always teaching a lesson, and the good one she taught me was that, again, was never miss those moments, because she called, she wanted to go to lunch, and then the next call, we couldn't make it work, and the next call I got was from Chris Hunter telling me that she had passed away that morning. So I can't even begin to tell you how much I'm going to miss Elaine as a friend, and as her contributions in terms of the community. Thank you. And you were so lucky to work with her. And live with her. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Keener?
Unlike probably most people in this room, I didn't know Elaine, but I read her columns, obviously, in the Tribune, and they were good and well written. That's all I can say.
Okay, I think that's all, and we again send our sympathies with you, and we're thinking of you every day. She left far too soon, but she left an incredible gift to Pacifica. She really had an incredible impact, and we will all miss her and love her, and we are thinking of you and your entire family in these weeks and time to come. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Just for the record, and so people know, Congresswoman Spear, State Senator Jerry Hill, State Assemblyman Mullen, the Board of Supervisors, along with the City of Pacifica, all gave proclamations and all had
Thank you for
representatives
adding
at the memorial service, which speaks very highly about how much she was thought of.
Yeah, thank you for adding that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay. Our next presentation is regarding affordable housing, a truly significant issue of our time with continuing rents and stagnant income, and be very interesting to hear. Hey, I don't know.
Thank you. So I'm Joshua, Joshua Abrams with Baird and Driscoll Community Planning, and for the last 6 years we've been working with we've staffed a group called 21 Elements, which is a countywide collaboration on housing policy. All the cities participated, recently won a American Planning Association Best Practice Award, and has allowed the cities to cooperate both on doing their housing elements and housing policy in a way that saved cities money and helped implement best practices. And today I'm going to talk about affordable housing. 3 main areas: a little bit about what affordable housing is and what it looks like, who builds it and who runs it, and options cities have to promote affordable housing. I think everyone pretty much knows about the need, but I'm going to talk about 2 trends. The first is the decrease in middle-income jobs. This is from a report from the Center for Continuing Study of the California Economy. And what you see in red there are the middle-income jobs that pay between $18 and $30 an hour. And you see slow growth from in the early 2000s, and then a huge loss of those jobs in 2007 to 2010, and while from 2010 to 2013, while both low and high wage jobs recovered, you see these middle income jobs, they recovered really only a fifth of the jobs they lost. And that's trends that are continued. They're going to continue, predicted to continue through 2020 at least, probably longer than that. But a real loss in teachers and construction jobs and factory and office jobs that pay living wages, but not super high wages. Add to that a real loss in affordability. There's lots of ways to quantify the loss of affordability. The realtors estimated that affordability decreased by 50% in just 2 years. And we all know rents have gone up by double-digit increases in the last couple of years. But sometimes it's nice actually to look at real life examples. And this is a property that's for sale here. It's on Cragmont, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath home, about 1,300 square feet, built in the 50s. And you can see in the records are only computerized back to 2000, so I went back as far as 2000, and then I adjusted for inflation to make them all the dollars the same. But the sales price in 2000 was a little over $500,000, which meant that a family earning $100,000 or a little over could purchase it, which is a teacher or a two-income family or one moderately high-income family, but still reasonable. If we went back to the 50s when the house was first built, you'd see much significantly lower prices. Today, it's for sale. It's for $699, which means you have to make $144,000. So just in those 15 years, in real dollar terms, in this very house, you see a 30% increase in the price and a 30% decrease or increase in the income level needed for buyers. Just a second one real quick. This one's in Moss Beach. It jumped from a buyer needing to make $120,000 in 1996 to $176,000 this year when it's for sale. So these are the two trends, this loss of middle-income jobs and the loss of affordability, that are really pushing affordable housing, and displacement and other issues to very high on people's radar. I'm going to talk a little, this will be the most technical slide, so feel free to zone out for a minute if numbers scare you. But a lot of people ask, when we say affordable housing, what do we mean? And to start with, there's a convention that a family can spend 30% of its income on housing. And then from the federal government, there are these income categories: very low income, moderate income, which are based on county level area median incomes adjusted for family size. So this is for Pacifica for 2014, what the numbers are for a family of 3. If nothing else, the take-home message from this slide is, when we say in the Bay Area, in Pacifica and San Mateo County, when we say affordable housing, we're really talking about workforce housing. We're talking about people working and making pretty decent incomes, but still not being able to afford homes. So there's a bunch of things that happen when we lose affordability. People have to make real hard choices. Some people leave town, some people choose to commute a long distance, some people double up, overcrowding. Well, we seem to be moving forward without my control. Also, families get separated as children have to leave. If children young families can't live in the community they grew up in, that's both not good for the community. It's also hard for the seniors who would rather have their families there as they're aging. It's also hard for businesses. I was just talking to a local school district, and one of their biggest challenges is being able to find employees, I'm not sure why we're on auto advance here, but to keep employees, one of the biggest challenges in keeping employees is the lack of affordable housing. It also relates to the seniors because there's increasing problems finding caregivers as they age. So real basically, what does affordable housing look like? Who builds it? Who runs it? It's called Half Moon Village. It's in Half Moon Bay. It's a 10-acre senior affordable housing complex. And there's a handful of nonprofits, well-established, that have been around for a long time in the county, who build most of the housing. So Mercy and Mid-Penn Housing collaborated on this project. And you can see, I think I don't know if people still have in their mind this old vision of what affordable housing looks like, but the new affordable housing doesn't look anything like that. They look modern, nice, and in fact, there's no reason to accept anything short of that. The city shouldn't approve an affordable housing project unless it looks unless it looks like a nice quality development, and they shouldn't allow an affordable housing project to be built unless there's a financing plan to ensure that over time it'll continue to be kept up and run well. There's a big trend. This is Coliseum Gardens. You won't even be able to find the affordable housing here. It's almost 500 units. 50 of them are affordable. They're integrated into the development, so it's seamless. And this is Vendome. It's in San Mateo County. It's frankly the nicest building on the block. It was built for formerly homeless people who had been homeless for many years, who had been causing problems in their downtown. They actually targeted that just for that reason. This picture it's just an average day. It's just Google Street View. It was taken last year. The building was built about 5 years ago. So 2,000 homeless people, formerly homeless people live here. The city's medical expenses for those people dropped 85%, and basically they had a lot of police problems with the homeless people that live here now. And they've basically they've dropped 99% the cost for the police interaction. So I think if you can make a home for long-term chronically homeless people with mental illness and other substance abuse problems look like this, then any affordable housing project can look really nice. So what can we do to promote affordable housing? There's 4 main ways that cities promote affordable housing. Either you incentivize or you require the market to produce it, you pay for it, affordable by design means you try and create zoning or other conditions where the market will naturally produce it, or you preserve the units you have now. So inclusionary zoning means that if a developer wants to build some market rate units, they have to build some affordable units. There's inclusionary zoning in Pacifica now. We'll talk about that a little more in a moment. Also, there's overlay zones or density bonuses where if a developer is allowed to build a certain amount of housing, they can build a little more if they provide some affordable housing. Pacifica requires 15% of all ownership units to be affordable. You used to require the same for rental projects, but there was a court decision that said cities can't require affordable housing for rental projects anymore. So that part of the policy was undone, not because of Pacifica's action, but because of the court's action. And the inclusionary zoning targeted low and moderate income households. So for paying for it, basically the point is you raise money and then you pool it with other sources of money and you give it to most likely a nonprofit developer in order to build the housing. There's benefits to building the units, requiring them to be built, and there's benefits to paying for it. One is you can attract leverage. For every dollar the city raises, you can often get 2 or 3 outside dollars to help build it. You also have some flexibility in terms of what you want. If you want very low income or senior housing, you have that flexibility. But there's also challenges with paying it. Dollars can be really hard to get. Also, the dollars can sometimes be hard to spend. Some cities collect a lot of money in their housing funds and then just have trouble getting locations or collecting enough money that makes sense for a nonprofit to do the development. Also, there are strings. I say in theory you have a lot of flexibility, but if you want to get that leverage and attract outside money, they might say you have to target a certain income group. So it's not always quite as free as you'd like it. The various sources of revenue, we all know about redevelopment agencies going away. That was, for a lot of cities, a major source of funding that's no longer there. Some cities have general fund or bond money that they put into it. Some cities do a hotel tax or other fees. But one of the big ways cities have responded both to the loss of redevelopment and the courts taking away inclusionary housing is impact fees on new development. We'll come back to impact fees in just a minute, because 21 Elements is working on a project that is relevant. Affordable by design, it's trying to create the market where the market will produce affordable housing. So one way is second units or granny suites. They often rent for affordable prices. Sometimes older units are more affordable. And sometimes you can craft zoning conditions with small lots or other things where the market makes more moderate priced housing. It's great because it's free, it doesn't cost the city anything. It's pretty difficult to get deep affordability. You might be able to get moderate affordability. And it's also, it sounds good, but it's hard to bring to scale. It's hard to get a lot of affordable units that way. And then the last thing is preserving the affordable housing you have. Things like limiting condo conversions, because rental units tend to be more affordable than condos. Tenants' rights and protections like just cause evictions or rent stabilization. And then some cities also will look at a market rate apartment and pay the owner to convert it to affordable. That's often a very effective strategy to protect affordability in the long term. Okay, talking about impact fees. Impact fees are a charge on new development that goes towards, in this case, affordable housing, but it goes towards not operating but one-time expenses. Imagine if you need to build a new school, you would look at how many children are in the school and what it costs and how many children are each household, and you'd come up with a per household charge in order to build the new school. Well, the same thing is with affordable housing. You look at market rate developers will pay a fee, and the fee will go into an affordable housing trust fund, and the trust fund will pay for new housing. Before you can do that, you need to do a nexus study. The nexus study is required by state and federal law, and it documents the relationship. Like I kind of just talked about with the schools, it documents it in a little more thorough level. Fees can be on a square foot or per unit basis. You can apply them to residential or commercial or both. So there's two studies that are often done together. The nexus it tells you it's legally required, and it tells you what the maximum permitted fees are. So it'll tell you exactly how much the most you could charge. The other one is not required, but it's really good, important thing to do. And it tells you what are good levels for Pacifica or for any jurisdiction to charge, because you don't want to just charge the maximum, because that could adversely impact development, which isn't the goal here. The goal here is to raise money but not impact development. So feasibility makes suggested levels. In terms of affordable housing, the nexus or connection is new market rate housing creates demand for new jobs, and some of those jobs pay low-income wages, and the government has a role in making sure there's housing for those low-income employees. The same thing for commercial, the commercial nexus study, but it just is one bullet shorter. There's new jobs, and some of them pay low-income wages, and the government has a role in housing for those employees. So 21 Elements has been coordinating a study with all the jurisdictions to do a nexus and commercial feasibility study. So any jurisdictions that want to implement those fees will be able to. They'll have both the legal backing and the suggested fees. We're doing it both for residential and commercial development, so a city could do one or the other or both. We're coordinating it. We hired a consultant, Strategic Economics, to do the work. We had some outside funding for it from HUD and MTC and Enterprise Community Partners, and we're most of the way along. We'll start getting the reports in May and have the final ones in June. There's a bunch of great advantages for all the cities working together. We cut the cost in half or more for the jurisdictions. Typically, it would cost $30,000 to $60,000, and the cost to participate altogether was just $15,000, because there's a lot of savings in the economy of scale. And we can also do more thorough analysis and research because it's worthwhile if you're working with that many jurisdictions. And then the last is there's a safety in numbers. A lot of jurisdictions will be worried about being ahead of their neighbors, but with all the cities in San Mateo County participating, there's a comfort that no one jurisdiction will be doing something that other jurisdictions aren't even looking at. And that is the end of the presentation. I'm happy if there's any questions.
Thank you very much for that very worthwhile presentation. I greatly appreciate it. Very timely. Does any of the council members have any questions regarding the presentation? Councilmember O'Neill?
A developer develops, and then there's, but I was looking at a school site when I was on the school board about some affordable workforce housing there. And my impression when I was working with Mid-Peninsula was that a lot of the houses now, affordable houses, are owned by like Wells Fargo or banks because they're looking at it as investment. Is that still true? Because this was like 5 or 6 years ago I was looking at it. Is that still true, or was I misinformed, or?
So your question, are many affordable homes owned by banks at this point?
Well, managed by banks, so that they really are. They're a lot. I grew up in San Francisco, and everybody looks at the Geneva Towers as the epitome of what not to do with affordable housing, except do what they did with Geneva Towers, and that was blow it up.
Right.
But but they were, Mid-Peninsula at that point was having Wells Fargo be the manager and provide some of the financing because Wells Fargo got tax credits, and that's how they were managing it. So who would be the manager to, collect rents, make repairs, or, if somebody doesn't pay their rent, evict them?
Right. So there's a lot of roles, there's a lot of different parties, and when you're first building it, banks are really active. If you want to get, the best source of funding is low-income housing tax credits, which is a very complicated world unto itself, but banks are heavily involved in that. And if it's a home ownership program, banks are involved in the mortgages when people move into the affordable unit. But on a day-to-day basis, it's going to be Mid-Penn that manages their unit, or Mercy Housing that manages their own housing.
No, I know also that there were some very precise requirements, like it had to be X amount of feet away from a library, X amount of feet from a school, from a grocery store. Is that still accurate? Has that been modified to kind of meet the market?
Well, so that's, if you want those federal dollars, if you qualify for low-income housing tax credits, the federal government will basically pay 75% of the cost of construction, which is phenomenal, which makes those federal dollars really competitive. So you have to meet all the conditions. If you want the federal dollars, you have to meet all the conditions, those rules you talked about, being near schools, being near transit. California actually makes those rules for California, but so you have to meet those rules. And then even you're not guaranteed to get those federal dollars. If you're not interested in those federal dollars, or if you're interested in the good but not great federal dollars, you don't have to follow as stringent rules. And if you had a bunch of money in your affordable housing trust fund, and there was an old dilapidated apartment that you wanted to fix up and have Mid-Penn run as affordable housing, and you weren't looking for federal dollars, you could do that anywhere you want. There's no limits to that.
Okay, so I think if I remember correctly, Pacifica has 345,000 in our, so we would probably be looking at the federal dollars if we were to try to do something like this. So we would have to fall under X amount of feet away from a library, because I remember the school site, there was one corner that was the exact dimension it needed so it would qualify. Okay.
So you're right. So that they want the feds or the state really to get the federal dollars wants you to be close to libraries and close to services. So in order to leverage your investment, you'd have to find locations that meet all the requirements.
Now, does your organization offer any sort of educational opportunities to the public or presentations so that you can kind of start, reaching out and talking to people about it?
So I'm here today. I'm happy to come back if I'm happy also to discuss if it makes sense to do a broader outreach plan. We don't, 21 Elements, in our work plan this year, we don't have a plan for a wide series of community meetings in a bunch of different communities. But I can maybe through Lee, I can send out some resources where there's at least online resources and more information.
And kind of last question is, I remember from several years ago that you cannot put a requirement on there that X amount of, teachers only, or so many teachers, so many public employees, or whatever. It's all just based on income, correct?
Well, the rules are complicated, and the feds don't want cities discriminating intentionally or accidentally. So you can have local preferences, you can have local resident preferences, or local employee preferences, or potentially school district or public employee preferences, but you have to do a fair housing analysis. So that basically, you would look at the school district employees, and if the demographics are similar to the community, racially and in other ways, then it's probably okay. But you can't target, you would probably have trouble. If you wanted to target teachers, you would probably have trouble, because that's not going to be as diverse as the general public. But if you wanted to target all school employees, including janitors and teachers and everyone else, it's a very real possibility that population is as diverse as the community, and then a fair housing law might let you do it.
Okay. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Neihardt?
Just a couple of things. First of all, I want to point out that this is an award-winning program. We were very pleased about that at the City and County Association of Governments, and I just want to congratulate you for all your work in this regard.
Thank you.
Did you do an intro? Could you just tell them about the 21 elements and a little bit about what that meant?
So 21 elements, about 6 years ago, the county brought all the jurisdictions together because the housing element deadline was approaching. And the county thought, if we can all cooperate, it'll be a lot easier for everyone. So rather than making everyone go to the census and pull their own demographic data, we pulled it all for everybody at the same time and gave it all to the cities. And rather than having, you're supposed to compare your fees and your parking standards to your neighbors. So rather having everyone call on the phone and talk with their neighbors, we just did one survey and sent out the results for everyone. Then we also used the opportunity just to share best practices. And we're real careful not to say what's good for any one jurisdiction. Each jurisdiction should make the choices that are best for them. But if there are programs that are working in other places, we work to bring attention to them. So that was the first round. And then when the first housing element deadline a number of years passed, we did some implementation action. So there was a state law changed about homeless and transitional housing. So we wrote some sample legislation so cities could comply with that more easily, organize some tours of homeless shelters. And in this round, the same thing for the new housing elements, a bunch of material to help jurisdictions adopt. We've seen actually a lot of jurisdictions that this round are doing it in-house, which is great. So that most jurisdictions would have to hire a consultant, but working with 21 elements, they can actually write it in-house, and we're there for them if they have technical questions or need anything else. So that saved them a lot of money. We did a survey. We had 100% of jurisdictions agree that it saved them time. 12 out of 13 agreed that it helped them write better policies. So really, we documented pretty good success. And then the Nexus study is a real tangible product that, having built all this trust and working together all these years, cities were interested in cooperating on doing the Nexus study, and I think the value of it's really clear. Well, Santa Clara County now wants to copy it, but Santa Clara County doesn't have this great vehicle of 21 elements to come together, so they're kind of scrambling. How do we all do our own joint Nexus study? Who do we talk with, and how do we make it happen? But San Mateo County is in a really great position that has had this for a bunch of years and had a bunch of good results. So yeah, thank you for that question.
Well, it wasn't really a question, it had a purpose. Because I just want to take the opportunity to point out that this is exactly why we're so active as part of the county. We are very fortunate to be in San Mateo County because we have one of the few organizations that really pools our money in many, many ways. And, that's the City and County Association of Governments. And then we work together with other projects that come along at various times, and one was the opportunity to work on 21, and by the way, it's 20 cities plus the San Mateo County, in case anyone was confused by that name, but it gives us that opportunity. And San Mateo County has done an amazing job of pooling resources. I just wanted to underscore that. I had one comment that I wanted to make, and I was thinking about it when you were speaking, Mike, and if you think about the slide where you showed the amount, the incomes, and going back to that particular slide, I do not particularly think in most areas of this country that $50,000 is necessarily low income. I don't necessarily think that $111,000 is moderate income. But in the Bay Area, this is the struggle. And when we start talking about this in planning, it is a huge struggle. And I'd like to differentiate the mention of things like Geneva Towers and working in more of what we consider to be poverty, and realize that, like you said, workforce housing affordable is having something that's available for people that are making $111,000 and realizing they still are priced out of the market in the Bay Area. And that's where we're at with nurses and teachers and so many people that are necessary for the livelihood of this area. And this is a struggle. We're trying to hook it up with transportation. It's a piece that's why it's so important with the City and County Association of Governments and why your work is so valuable. Thank you for presenting tonight. I really appreciate it. And thanks for the awards and recognition that you've gotten also.
Very nice. I have another question from Councilmember O'Neill.
Yeah, I have a question, and I just have a frame of reference. That if you look at Pacifica, within a 1 mile radius, the average income is $123,000, and that was as of last year, and these numbers last year. So you're talking about just barely qualifying to buy a house in the Lindemar Valley for there. The question I had was that I know, is it possible to have workforce housing as for someone to live in a unit as one method of a percentage of what they earn, and then the other one, there's a second way they do it. We have the two senior housing complexes here. One is the percentage of what you earn, and the other is the total qualified income. Can you structure it either way, or does the whole set unit have to be one way, or can you have 50-50? Or is that no longer done?
So I had to make sure I understand. So one way to see, to make sure we're talking about who's eligible to live in a subsidized apartment, is that generally, and how you determine if someone's eligible?
No, if someone wants to live there, let's say they make, $10,000 a month, okay? Yeah. Can, if they qualify for workforce housing as a percentage, can you rent them an apartment based on, let's say, 30% of their income, which is $3,000 a month? Or is it only based on what their total household income is and it's subsidized or whatever?
The standard way would be to look at total household income and then take the numbers that kind of all flow down originally from the federal analysis about area median income and base it straight on if they qualify. Cities probably have some freedom to do other methods, but it's sometimes simpler just to stick with the conventional method, because then it just, exactly, do we qualify for state matching aid on this, and everything matches up if you stick with the conventional methods.
Okay, thank you. I'm done.
Any other questions from council? We've had some excellent questions here, and I know we do have one person in the audience that would like to ask a question or make a comment regarding this, and I've been told that that's very reasonable and acceptable, so I'm going to have Therese Dyer come up to the podium and make a comment.
Yeah, good evening. I just noticed on tomorrow's agenda at this county supervisors meeting that they are going to either approve or disapprove. They got $4.5 million for housing. Where does Pacifica fit in? The county received a large sum of money from the state with the dissolved redevelopment agencies. $500,000 is going to be used for 32 units in Redwood City. $500,000 is going to go to Colma Veterans Village, and $2.5 million in Daly City, and another $1 million in East Palo Alto. Where does Pacifica fit in? I've lived here 53 years, and we're the same population, and I think that's a shame that we don't have any representation at the county meetings speaking up, except for me, and I guess I don't count.
Thank you, Therese. Okay, that was an information item. So I believe we are going to move on to the next item unless anybody else would like to make any additional comment. No? All right, thanks so much for that excellent presentation. As I said before, it's very timely and necessary and some excellent questions. Now it's time for council communications. The purpose of council communications is for council members to inform each other and the community of potential interest, of things that have potential interest to other council members about things, interagency meetings and whatnot. So if anybody would like to start about.
Yeah.
You ready? Yeah. Councilmember Keener?
Yes. So I went to a CCA workshop in South San Francisco the week before last, and first I want to thank Marianne Neidhart for bringing this to our attention and urging me to go to it, and to Christian Murdoch in the planning department for attending with me. And we also saw 4 other Pacificans there at the workshop. CCA stands for Community Choice Aggregation, which is a means of buying electrical power that is basically greener than PG&E. PG&E still provides the transmission to the home over their lines and also the billing. So the experience to the consumer is basically unchanged. Marin and Sonoma counties have CCAs up and running, and San Mateo County and the cities included in it are considering it. The first step is a feasibility report by the county, which requires action by each city to approve the sending of electrical load data to the county, and that's what the resolution later on the agenda is about today. I should say there's no commitment on the part of the city, and there's no personal information revealed. If the CCA is approved somewhere down the road, and it looks like the organizations that already exist in Marin and Sonoma, everybody will be automatically enrolled, but they may opt out and go back to PG&E at any time for the power portion of their bill. So right now, for 50% renewable power, Marin and Sonoma CCAs charge residential users a little less than PG&E charges for about 22% renewable power. And businesses and municipalities save more. So to learn more about the CCA effort in San Mateo County, look up the Office of Sustainability, subheading Energy, on the county's website. And I'm sure you'll hear more about the CCA later in this meeting and probably in the future. One other thing, I also attended Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Commission meeting, and I'm trying to go to each commission just to meet the commissioners and to learn what kind of issues they face. 3 of them were out sick, so I'll have to go to another one this month.
Thank you very much. Council member or Mayor Pro Tem Degree.
We had our airport commission meeting, which is usually about a quarterly meeting, and unanimously, well, I shouldn't say unanimously, one city voted with concern, had a concern vote. We have agreed that we will meet in, outside of those meetings, in subcommittees according to regions, so we're part of the North region, and that's the hope of being able to hear from our constituents more closely. And the meetings coming up, we have an Economic Development Committee tomorrow. It's at 6 o'clock at the Police Department. Of course, you know, one of the main goals is to encourage and support our local businesses, and the other is to encourage new businesses, so we're certainly open to hearing from you. And we have a very important annual goal-setting meeting, which is on the 21st. Is there going to be an update on dates and times on that?
Lori Tenfo, City Manager. The goal setting is going to be starting on Friday the 20th at 3 p.m. and go through dinner and then reconvene, as you said, on Saturday the 21st. The agenda is still being finalized. We will have it published in the paper, so it'll be finalized by Wednesday, and you all, of course, will get that. But it will include some team building and some opportunity for the council to talk about how you're working together, and then, of course, an update on the strategic plan that you've been working on for the last 2 years.
And that will be here, correct?
No, we are still exploring options since the council has requested that we figure out if there's another place besides the police station. We're going to be settling on that probably tomorrow. We'll be back in touch with you with
Okay.
the final location.
Thank you. And the Open Space and Parklands Committee, again, meets on the third Wednesday, which will be the 17th.
Thank you. And Councilmember Neihardt?
Yes, and thank you, Councilmember Keener, for going to that. And also, the council itself, we were all at the Council of Cities meeting in which this was presented, and those presenters were there again. So I think we've been pretty well exposed. And at that same Council of Cities meeting, I want to congratulate Mike O'Neill on being elected to the LAFCO Commission for all the special districts that might be formed in the Oversight Committee for that. So Councilmember O'Neill was elected. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. I did my orientation for the Transportation Authority. I'm the city at large representative now for the TA and have been since December. So this is my second meeting. And it was fascinating at that meeting to approve a $49 million project that had been worked on for some time with South San Francisco and their train station, which is all part of their revitalization. And I have to always congratulate South San Francisco for being there and working in that way so diligently. But when I was talking to Supervisor Horsley and we were discussing the strategic plan, which, by the way, I have for the Transportation Authority for 2014 through 2019, we realized that there is just no place in that strategic plan for the east-west corridors. We focus almost entirely on El Camino and 101 and spend very little time with connections across the county. And in any strategic plan, whether it's the City and County Association of Governments, CCAG, whether it's the TA, Transportation Authority, and whether it's One Bay Area, which has really picked up what the county is doing. We don't do well with that. So we started building a coalition of cities with the Board of Supervisors and working with them on a variety of ways we might begin to think about connecting in an east-west way. And with that, Karen Irvin, Mayor Irvin, and myself attended the second rounds, the 2017 rounds of One Bay Area planning, and it's really very positive to see us moving forward in a number of different ways. But with priority development areas, which receive 70% of the funding in transportation dollars in cities, going from 100 acres as a minimum requirement down to 40 acres, it's much more reachable for us in an area like even this area to have it connected to transportation in that east-west way. So I'm very excited about continuing to work on that. And I'm also very excited about the fact that the Measure A grants and moving forward, I want to congratulate city staff and thank the Land Trust for their incredible work on getting us from 331 applicants down to 37 applicants. And there's another study session, but it's quite a bit of money on the line in two separate grants because the county has one also. To look at the headlands and to put forward the whole Pedro Point Headlands project. So I'm really excited about ultimately seeing that become another one of our planning tools, which is a priority conservation area. And that designation opens us up for a number of other grant opportunities. So it's been a pretty eventful set of meetings over the last couple of weeks with planning and planning in a county-wide way. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilmember O'Neill?
I was just going to kind of, actually, just to kind of comment on Mayor Neihardt, or Councilmember Neihart's, at congestion management, the focus is very much 101 and El Camino. There's like very little on the east-west connection. Just kind of going over the last couple weeks. I attended the chamber dinner where they installed their new officers. I also went to the Pacifica in Care event that was attended also by Sue and Karen. Congratulations, Sue, as being one of the awardees. I attended Elaine Larson's memorial. Also the Pacifica School Volunteers had a very nice reception. Today I attended the library JPA, and what's excuse me, interesting is that they're beginning their strategic plan, and that they are going to be reaching out to at least 3 events here in Pacifica to get people's input on what the whole, not just like the Pacifica Library, but what the county library system should do in the next 5 years. So we might want to keep on that. But one thing that I found is people ask, why do we need a library or whatever? But because schools are closed, and therefore if a school is closed, they're not giving, feeding the kids that are on free or reduced lunch, the county through Big Lift has come up with their giving free and reduced lunches to those kids, and they served over 10,000 lunches during their summer reading program, which was, I thought, very, very kind of interesting to find out. And the cities of Brisbane and Half Moon Bay both just voted to build new libraries.
Great. Thank you very much, Mike. Okay, I think most of the events that I have attended, including the Association of Bay Area Governments with Councilmember Neihart, and many of the others have already been discussed, but I did attend a beautification committee meeting, which is moving along on many, many projects in Pacifica and getting things done there. And I'd just like to again comment on the Planned Bay Area, and it is super important that we do pay attention to what we can do. They're really looking at high-density development near transit areas, and this potentially can be an opportunity for us to get something built here in Pacifica that we could really benefit from. And, coming on the heels of a discussion on affordable housing, it is very critical that we do pay attention, and it's also so interesting that we do qualify for priority conservation areas as well, and these types of things really link us to many, many grant opportunities and the ability to get some help from federal and state funding and things like that. So that is all very, very important, and I really commend this council for getting out there in San Mateo County and advocating for so much of these funds. And I'd also like to congratulate Mike on his assignment to LAFCO, and Councilmember Neihart on her assignment to the San Mateo County Transportation Authority. Both very important organizations within our region, and it really can make quite a difference when it comes to generating interest and for projects that we have and needs that we have here in Pacifica. Again, we're have the Economic Development Committee meeting coming up, goal setting. I'm attending a legislative committee meeting on Thursday where they really discuss new legislation that could again be affecting our city and our region. And we're moving along and we're doing what we can. And again, I'm so proud of the Land Trust and the work that they're doing for generating grant money for the Pedro Point Headlands and many of the other projects in that region. So that's about it. Okay, so this is the time that we have oral communications. This portion of the agenda is available for the public to address the City Council or on any issue that is not on the agenda. Any person wishing to address the Council shall be recognized by the Mayor during oral communications, provided, however, that during the oral communications portion of the agenda, only items not on the agenda for that meeting may be addressed. All remarks shall be addressed to the Council as a body and not to any member thereof. Council members shall not enter into debate with speakers under oral communications. A maximum time of 3 minutes will be allowed for any speaker. Pursuant in Pacifica Municipal Code, Title II, Chapter 1, Section 2-1, 118, any person making impertinent, slanderous, or profane remarks, or who become boisterous while addressing the council shall be called to order by the presiding officer, and if such conduct continues, may at the direction of the presiding officer be ordered barred from further audience before the council during the meeting. So with that, I encourage anybody that wants to speak at this time to go back and fill out a yellow card and bring it forward, and I'll get started. And the first speaker is Therese Dyer.
Good evening, City Council and staff. I have two concerns here. One is about how often are employee job descriptions updated. The last one I picked up was in 1999. And who's responsible for these updates? The reason I'm interested is because there's such a lack of communication regarding the staff and the contract employees. And I'm referring to the building inspector, who is not an employee, but she's under contract, okay? At the beginning of the storm season here, I called her because my roof was leaking again after paying $14,000 for the second roof, you know, and my insurance canceled me on the first one and so forth. Okay, well, then I was told it wasn't the roof, it was my chimney. So if my chimney had so many cracks that it's leaking, either somebody should be responsible for that, the inspector that went up there and approved it, because these cracks didn't happen overnight, I'm sure. So that's one issue. So then I went to get a job description of an inspector. And it's a laughing matter because N stands for non-applicable, S stands for seldom, minimal, M is moderate, average, and G is great and excessive. And they're divided into environmental factors and functional factors. And I'd suggest that you get a copy, because I can't read this all to you today, but they're supposed to be able to push, pull, reach above the shoulder, use of fingers, both hands required, walking, standing, sitting, kneeling, blah, blah, blah. Well, does that mean climbing on your roof? Because to me, the inspector's got to go up there and see if the job was done right. Now, I talked to Mr. Hines about 2 weeks ago, and I gave him a whole bunch of information and so forth. I have not heard from him, so much for your communication. I also read the article by the city manager, Lori Tinfo. Talk about communication. I'm still waiting, and it's almost a year in March.
Thank you, Therese. Our next speaker is Tom Clifford, and then followed by Ken Miles.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Tom Clifford, Lindemar area, and I also have a problem with something I discovered that has been a change in how we do things. In researching what's happening with the Planning Commission, I went back to look at the minutes. And lo and behold, the minutes are now action minutes. And action minutes, I think, are fine for the Beautification Committee or the Open Space Parklands Committee, maybe the Economic Development Committee. But for land use, one of the most contentious issues in town, to have action minutes that literally don't tell you what the Planning Commission has talked about, don't tell you what was presented, don't tell you what staff had to say for any questions. It simply tells you who was there and what the decision was. That is not really acceptable in terms of, well, if you guys have something appeal to you, where's your official document for you to understand what's happened? All you know is that it was voted on. You don't know anything. I mean, and I understand that money's tight and that having a stenographer there to take the minutes is not viable. You do run a tape on it, though, because you got the tape machine. And I believe that if you can't afford to have somebody on staff transcribe them, there are transcribing services that could take care of this. I'm hoping, I know you can't discuss this tonight, but I am hoping that one of you will put this on the agenda so that it can be discussed about how this happens. I don't know if you even knew that this had happened. I have no idea if the council was aware that this change had been made 6 months ago by George White. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. Ken Miles, followed by Roger Medler.
Good evening, City Council members. Ken Miles from Ballymar. I'd like to speak about fire hazards here in Pacifica. As you recall, 2 weeks ago on a Monday morning, at 4 o'clock in the morning, a tree fire started up in Rockaway. That's recent history. About 2 years ago, the back of Lindemar had a big grass fire and caught trees and almost destroyed some houses at about 4 or 5 different, it seemed like 4 or 5 different police districts were, fire districts were there with fire trucks and et cetera. And we had grass fires up on the GGNR properties. And then I remember Oakland Hill fire. We're primed for a big fire. And with the drought coming on, dry grass, eucalyptus trees, pine trees, a lot of litter around the grounds. And I live in about half-acre parcel that's up in the trees, and I'm working my butt off trying to get the underbrush cleaned up and debris taken away. And some of my neighbors aren't doing that. And I can see if there's a big fire, we can have a disaster in Ballymar, elsewhere maybe Pedro Point or Lindemar, just like Oakland Fire. So I recommend that one is that people do not park in front of fire hydrants like they do in the evenings on weekends. The police enforce that. And I've been talking about that with the city, and it doesn't seem to go anywhere. And I mean, who am I going to go to if I have watched my house burn down and there's cars parked in front of the fire hydrant? And the second thing is maybe inform the people that are living in the treed areas that this is a fire hazard area, to remove the brush. And there's some guidelines in the website put out by the fire marshal that's in the city, and they're very helpful. It'll tell you to clear out about 30 feet away, trim the branches down, and then followed up maybe by some inspections of the worst area, and then please put this on your agenda.
Great.
Do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments. Roger Medler?
Yeah, hi. Well, for one thing, I'm glad that we don't have 5 police officers here every night. One officer should be able to take care of the whole thing. Anyway, it's starting to look a little better. Anyway, I did talk to Elaine Larson, and her comment was that the city council takes care of themselves and their friends, and that's true. She told me that about 30 years ago. I'm sorry for her passing away. And so if this is your town, maybe we should all just move out and let you guys take care of it. I mean, you're not listening to anything we say about our communication. I've given you packages, and I've gotten no response and no communication there. I mean, we're talking about communication at every meeting we come to here, and you're just not responding at all. I would think that your response would be, well, Mr. Medler, I think we will get right on it and look into it and get back with you. But no, that don't happen. Anyway, we've had meetings with the city officials, and they don't even let us talk. So what kind of meeting is that? I mean, we come up here and talk to you, you don't talk back to us. That's not a meeting. Yeah, so if you really don't want us to ask questions, or you don't want us to talk, it's pretty obvious. We can't even approach it. And I'll never do that again, that's for sure. Why are you here? You're here to serve the public. You don't even care to communicate. The whole idea is communicate. Come on, we've had thousands of dollars spent on communication. You ain't communicated yet. So why do you even call this a meeting? Well, it's a waste of time and money. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Bart Willoughby.
That's on the agenda for Kimco.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, next speaker, David Blackman.
Hello, it's Dave Blackman. We're here in Pacifica, and man, it sounds like there's a lot of negative stuff up here, and I don't want to follow with more negative stuff, so I'm going to try to make this as constructive as I can. The staff involved in the permit process are granted by the council an amazing amount of power, enough power to bankrupt some families building a home. With that granted power, there should be some balance or oversight or accountability. One component of this balance is to initiate a fair and speedy appeal process to help prevent unfair and illegal decisions from becoming final. At this time, there's no accountability and no appeals process for fire prevention and the engineering department, and a very inadequate accountability and appeals process for the building and planning. Due to the lack of accountability, many people have been incredibly hurt by the decisions by the permit issuing departments. I'm not going to go on with this letter. I'm at a really frustrated crossroads right now. I have a few appeals coming forward, so you'll get to hear those more specifically. And it just feels like some staff members really have lost the way of helping the public and helping make projects come forward. And, some things are just going down illegally. And I just wish there was a better appeals process when there is things that aren't meeting forward, especially for the engineering department. A few years ago, I came up here asking for help when the engineering department asked me to do some work for another project. At the time, I felt it was really unfair that they did that. And I did learn it was unfair. The city spent $350,000 in litigation to try to push that on me and lost, and I got a $50,000 settlement. Everybody lost in that. The public, myself, the neighbors. We need some better accountability, and I think one step we can do is make sure there's an appeals process. Santa Cruz has got a really neat appeals process, something that's speedy, fair. It could be paid by the developers, but something, at least in the engineering department, there's nothing. So hopefully you guys can put that together and just have some discussion about it and see what the pros and cons are. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next speaker is Michelle Garcia.
Hello, I'm Michelle Garcia. I've recently moved here about 5 years ago, and we're in the process of building a home. And as much as I know that that process takes a long time, and I'm learning step by step how long that actually takes, Dave Blackman actually touched on something that we're dealing with. We're trying to get something as simple as an encroachment permit. We are asking for permission to dig up the street, put in our utilities, and put it back. We have no problem following the rules. 3.5 months in, and I still don't have my encroachment permit. But I also have a 24-month construction loan that I've lost almost 4 months on. I have worked with several people in that department, gotten some response, gotten no response. Just last week, got a response, sent an email confirming that we were going to move forward on what we agreed on, and I still haven't gotten an email back today. I sent that email Friday morning. I was told I would have that encroachment permit sometime this week, but today I still haven't gotten a confirmation that what we agreed on what was going to happen. As a community member, I live my life based on integrity, accountability, and honesty. And I would hope that the people who work for this city, who are working for me, that I'm paying to help me live here, would work under those same guidelines. I think it's only fair. And I really, really wish that if I leave a phone message, send an email, even if it's, I'm in meetings all day, I'll get back to you tomorrow, that would be great. I feel as if in the last 2.5 years, I have given this city $10,000, and I still cannot even put in my utilities. To me, that's just unfair. I'm not treating anybody disrespectfully, but I feel that we are being treated disrespectfully. And it's just not right. And I really wish that as a community, all the departments worked with us, because you require us to follow the rules and regulations and the standards to build our home, but I don't feel that the departments are necessarily following the standards. So you're asking us to follow rules, but you're not necessarily following your own rules. And it would be really great if somehow, as a community, we all worked together so that not only me, but other people who want to live here and build a home. You want revenue for your city? I want to pay for my encroachment permit, and you guys haven't let me pay for 3.5 months. So when you say you don't have money, and I say, well, I have a checkbook, I'm willing to write my check for my encroachment permit, and people are telling me, I'm not going to give it to you. Or here's all these reasons why. I comply with those reasons, and it still doesn't happen. Then new reasons come up. And then I'm told, well, this is a 2-part process.
Thank you very much for your comments, Michelle. I don't have any additional cards. Anybody else want to speak? Okay. Means we're going to move on to the next agenda item. And that brings us to item 5 of considerations. This is approval of the 380 Esplanade Settlement Agreement, lateral drain construction and parking lot restoration contract related to the 2010 local emergency storm drainage at 380 and 400 Esplanade. Staff report, please, when you're ready.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council member. My name is Raymond Dunguinis with the Engineering Division. Tonight before you are the 380 Esplanade Settlement Agreement, the lateral drain construction project, and the parking lot restoration project. Severe storms of 2010 combined with high tides and waves caused damages to the property owned by Aimco at 380 Esplanade, as well as to the rock revetment owned by the city. At that time, the city's drainage outfall carried stormwater from Esplanade Avenue through an easement under Aimco's parking lot. Aimco asserted that the city was responsible for damages to its property. However, the city disagreed. The city and Aimco entered into a settlement agreement in September 2010 that provided for 1, rerouting of the drainage outfall from 380 Esplanade parking lot to a new outfall at the 500 block of Esplanade. 2, pumping the stormwater collected from Aimco's parking lot to the rerouted Esplanade drainage. 3, repairs to the existing revetment at 380 Esplanade with the city as applicant for the coastal development permit with the Coastal Commission. And 4, repair of the damage of Aimco's parking lot associated with the projects. During the course of applying for the CDP, the city and Aimco disagreed about the relative obligations under the 2010 settlement agreement to pay for certain mitigation fees being imposed by the Coastal Commission. Accordingly, the parties have negotiated a second settlement agreement, and Aimco has agreed to pay 81% of the mitigation fees required by the Coastal Commission, while the city shoulders the remaining 19%. Originally, the Coastal Commission was asking for in-kind mitigation, such as construction amenities like, for example, a horizontal bluff trail along the 400 block of Esplanade. However, staff estimated it will be more costly to the city and opted to pay the mitigation fees rather than constructing the trail. The 2015 settlement agreement executed by Aimco is attached as Attachment 1. It is staff's recommendation to approve the settlement terms and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement. Currently, Aimco's parking lot at 380 Esplanade drains into the city's existing 51-inch pipe that runs underneath the parking lot. The lateral construction project will pump the stormwater from the 51-inch pipe to the rerouted storm drain along Esplanade Avenue. This project also includes cutting the existing outfall at the bluff face and providing landscaping to cover the area where the outfall pipe was cut. The plans and specifications were done by CSG Consultants, Inc., and by Engineering Division staff. On December 17th, 2014, this project was advertised and 5 companies bought plans, with 3 submitting bids. On January 14th, 2015, the bids were received, and the apparent low bidder is KC Construction, Inc., with a bid amount of $72,880. This will be the first project that KC Construction, Inc. will be doing for Pacifica, so staff checked their references and they were all positive. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation to award the contract to the apparent low bidder, KC Construction, Inc. In previous city projects, Pacifica has used the services of CSG Consultants for construction management and inspection work. Because of their expertise in this field, staff recommends approval of the contract to perform construction management, and inspection for this project. As noted, the 2010 settlement agreement provides for the city to restore Aimco's existing parking area located at 380 Esplanade. The parking lot restoration project will apply a layer of slurry seal and pavement striping to the existing parking lot at 380 Esplanade. The project plans and specifications were done by engineering division staff and was advertised for bid on December 17, 2014. 5 companies bought plans and 3 submitted bids. On January 14, 2015, the bids were received, and the apparent low bidder is American Asphalt with a bid amount of $15,040. American Asphalt has satisfactorily completed city seal projects in recent past. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation to authorize award of contract to the apparent low bidder, American Asphalt. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much for that staff report. Do I have any questions from the council?
Just one.
Councilmember Neihardt.
So just one, because this was mountains of stuff to go through. And in 2010, I thought we had settled this, but we didn't actually ever build anything. We didn't fix the pipe, move anything. We didn't do anything.
The acquisition, through the mayor, the acquisition of the permit waiver to construct the outfall to the fiber block took a long time, going back and forth with the Coastal
Taken all
Commission.
this time?
Yes, taken all this time.
All right. Okay.
I just had a quick question regarding the funds. So this is in the disaster relief fund, and we've had enough money in that relief fund. Are we concerned about covering this expenditure, or is there any, where did that money?
Enough money is previously budgeted as part of the fiscal year 14-15 city budget to cover this.
Okay. And there's plenty of money in that fund. Mayor Pro Tem Degree?
Oh, actually, I don't have a question. I already asked 1,000 questions, sorry. It's question time, right?
Right. Anybody else have any questions? Seeing no more questions, I'll bring it to the public. Is anyone out in the public that'd like to have a question? I don't have any yellow cards.
Mayor Irvin, if I might interrupt, I'm sorry. I just wanted to offer a clarification about the funding, because as the council has heard and the community has heard,
yes,
the disaster fund is one of the funds that we have been running in the red.
Yes.
The reason why there's money in it for these repairs is because we're counting on the reimbursement from CalEMA to cover these repairs. And so for this year's budget, we show that money coming in and that money going out.
Okay.
So I just wanted to clarify the record that it is a fund that we're still working on bringing into the black, but this action is covered.
Right. And it's imperative that we get this work done.
It is.
Right. And do you know when we might expect that money from CalEMA?
I'll defer to Van Ocampo.
It's on a reimbursement basis, so once we spend the money, then we can always claim the money.
Thank you very much.
That was basically the reason that I made the comment that I made about we didn't do anything in 2010 and why we've been continuing the emergency along that area, because if you know about disaster relief, you know that you don't get paid until it's spent. And you have to show the spending, right?
That is correct.
Okay. So that's why it hasn't, I just wanted to make sure that point was clear, that we didn't do anything, even though we've been negotiating with the landowners all this time. Okay.
Great.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay.
I have a comment
Okay.
I wanted to
Yeah, time for comments. Mayor Pro Tem Degree?
Right, I had 1,000 questions, but I sat with Van and maps. So I just wanted to tell the community, one of my major concerns was the fact that we had been talking about this area at the foot of Manor, which was purchased some time ago. We were lucky to get it. Was going to be a park area, and so the money the mitigation money will go to the Coastal Conservancy, and they've already shown some plans for that. That doesn't mean they'll get it, but at least I wanted to follow that line through.
That is correct.
Thank you. That's all.
And you're
Ready to make a motion?
okay. I know there's 4 proposed action. Is take them all
all together.
Oh, we can take them all together, great. That's great to
Really?
know, okay. Councilmember Nihart, I'll let you go.
That's what I was going to do. Thanks for bringing that up, first of all, Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Degree. I appreciate that because that's, with all that construction down there, the public has seen that area constantly torn up because of all this going on. And now, if we get this settled, we can actually let them fix it, right?
Right, the,
Okay. It's good. Just leave it at that. Okay. This will be so nice not to see on an agenda anymore. Approve, I would like to move 4 actions here. Approve the settlement agreement between the City of Pacifica and Aimco Esplanade Avenue Apartments LLC and authorize the city manager to execute the settlement agreement. I would also like to see the award of the construction contract to Casey Construction for 2010 Kalima, the 380 Esplanade Lateral Drain Construction Project in the amount of $72,880. Authorize the city manager to execute all necessary documents associated with that award of the construction contract. Number 3, approve the consultant agreement for construction management and inspection services between the City of Pacifica and CSG Consultants, Inc. for 2010, the Kalima project, 380 Esplanade Lateral Drain Construction Project in the amount of $14,100, and authorize the city manager to execute the consultant services agreement. And last but not least, number 4, award the construction contract to American Asphalt for the 380 Esplanade Avenue Parking Lot Restoration Project in the amount of $15,040, and authorize the city manager to execute all necessary documents associated with the award of the construction contract.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, time to vote. And that passes 5-0. Okay. Okay, the next item under consideration is item 6, council direction on whether or not to send the attached letter to Kimco Realty. We don't have a staff report, is that, do we have a staff report?
Yes, I'll present the information that's in the written report before you. The requested action from council is to provide direction on whether or not to send the letter to Kimco that's attached as part of the packet. Some of the background pertains to Councilmember O'Neill coming to me in the fall and asking for the city to send a letter to Kimco that requested them to come to a council meeting to explain what's going on with 2 properties that they own in town. And I offered to pen a letter that was somewhat differently worded, that basically acknowledged their ownership of properties in the city, and told them we noticed that there's some changes going on and to set up a telephone call or a meeting. And Councilmember O'Neill felt strongly that the city should send something else, and so the copy of the letter that's attached to the report is one that he penned. And this is coming forward in this way because, as you know, the council rules and code of ethics stipulates that a council member can ask to have an item put on the council agenda for the council consideration, and so that is sort of why this is coming forward. When I was looking closely at the council rules, I also noticed that there's a provision that says a council member can come to the city manager to ask for a detailed staff report as long as it's 7 days before a council meeting. And I drew that to your attention in this report and into a second one because that's an item that I wanted to be clear about expectations. And as I said in the report, that's a timeline that's probably not doable from staff. And I just open that up as an observation and probably a request in the future to have you all talk about that and give me clear direction if that's something you really would like to leave in the council rules, and then if so, I will make other accommodations for other work. So with that, I'd be happy to answer questions. I did offer some options in terms of, in addition to sending the letter that was attached, everything from doing so to making modifications to the letter, to giving me direction to come back with a letter or to send no letter. And as I said, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have, or perhaps Councilmember O'Neill would like to chime in here too.
Sure, great. Councilmember O'Neill.
I would like to clarify one thing, is that I had no problem with the 7 or 10 days or whatever. I think, if I remember correctly, I asked for this in November, so I never pressured for shorter than 7 or 10 days. That's correct, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
It was more just an observation.
It made it, your staff report made it sound like I said I want it now or something. I did not say that.
Oh, I apologize if that's true.
Yeah. Basically, as I go around town and, talk to different citizens, they ask me, well, what's going on with Linamar Center? What's going on with Linamar Center? I mean, I tend to get Linamar because that's where I live and, shop and stuff. And then the straw that kind of really tipped it was when Denny's closed. And I mean, I was getting my hair cut and there was 5 people there, and everyone was asking me, what's going on with Denny's? What's going on with Linamar Shopping Center? And I just feel that the city has just been very passive in not really being any aggressive at all and trying to figure out what is Kimco doing. It was for sale last year. And one of the things they touted was the fact that, all these are short-term leases, and that, when you get here, you can up the rent. And as we read in the Tribune, the Denny's was not given the chance to get anything more than a 1-year lease, excuse me. So I'm concerned because I think the old Hallmark, W.T. Grant, Ben Franklin, whatever memory serves you correctly, has been vacant for, at least by my recollection, 4 or 5 years. And there has been concern that, in talking to the chamber, that people have gone by and asked why, I was thinking about opening a business, but you have all these vacancies sitting in Linamar Center. What's the business climate here? Why should we do it? As I read earlier, I mean, we have a healthy income here in Pacifica that people can't. Last time I looked, we had the equivalent household income of Belmont. And I would think that, I mean, granted, we are challenged because, as I think Councilmember Nyhart mentioned, half the radius is water for retailers. But I'm just concerned that the city does express something to Kimco that we are concerned about the vacancies, both on an income level because of sales tax revenue. Also, I'm concerned that, teens, these jobs are kind of like the first jobs a lot of teens get. And they can walk there, they don't need, so you have younger people that don't need to drive somewhere to get a job, and you have the multiplier effect, okay? They take and they get a job, they'll go take and purchase something at Rite Aid or Ross's, that's where my daughters go, Ross's. But I think it's just important the city finally take a stand, and it has been mentioned many times in previous thoughts in the city that why are we going to try to build any more commercial space when what we have isn't full? And I think it's time for the city to take a stand and notify Kimco that they would like to come and just have them come to council and the public and explain what's your long-term strategy, what are your plans, because this is part of Pacifica, and I think it's imperative that council take a stand.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Degree.
I'm actually very much in support of doing this sort of thing. It wouldn't be the first time that we tried to find out what's going on with not only Kimco's Plaza, but various other ones. I do think we do need to be proactive. Have tried something like this before, not asking for a meeting or a report to, actually not asking for a report to the public in the council chambers, but we hit some roadblocks that it's all what the market bears. And that kind of a statement was supposed to tell you there's nothing you can do, so go away. And that didn't come from them. But I'm at the point where I don't want to accept anything like that, so I would like to see a fallback for us to discuss a fallback position too, that if an outreach of come and talk to us in either a meeting with the manager and staff and maybe perhaps the mayor, that that wasn't what they wanted to do also, or the opportunity for them to come and present to the public, which they may not want to do, they may want to avoid that. Either one of both of those things I'm very much in favor of, but the fallback position that I'm suggesting is that if those two things don't cause something positive to make the community more in control of itself, then I would say we should try to go up, if that means going to the state. So my purpose again is that the community has as much rights as private industry or corporations, that what our community looks like to other commercial people and to its citizens is as important as what they hope to gain by trying not to have long-term leases or whatever. We're actually in the dark as to what they're doing, so I repeat that I'm definitely in favor of something to flesh this out, to give us an opportunity to be a voice at the table in some way, shape, or manner. So I did write another potential that you could look at that covers both the manager and the Councilman O'Neill.
Great, thank you. And we're trying to stick to questions right now.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. Councilmember Nyhart?
Just a quick question. Two, actually. One is, I haven't seen another city. I mean, I kind of did some checking. I haven't seen this done in this manner previously. We've certainly never done it this way since I've been on council. Is that something you've seen done?
No, I haven't seen it done quite this way, no.
And the second question is you said it waited till from November. Just out of curiosity, we have the goal study session, and this could be part of our goals. I was just wondering why we didn't wait one more week here and bring it up at goal study session and put it as part of what we're doing with the economic plan. I'm just curious about that because you've basically gone, I mean, the city's gone from over 200 staff down to less than 150. You've rebuilt the entire finance department. You're rebuilding much of City Hall. We were down 2 department heads, 3 with the acting roles. I'm just curious, wouldn't it make sense to have an economic development person make this outreach, as Mayor Pro Tem Degree pointed out, and have a separate meeting? And I mean, I'm just throwing that out.
Certainly, if and when we get the economic development manager, this would be something under their umbrella of activity, yeah.
Yeah, that's how I've seen it done in most cities, that you would work with the developer at that level. Okay, just curious.
Councilmember Keener?
Yeah, these aren't questions, just observations.
Okay, so we really should, try to stick to questions right now, and then we're going to come back and do comments. But if you can frame it in the form of a question, it's great. All right, then we'll come, you'll have an opportunity to do this. So I just had a couple questions. Do we know what our current vacancy rate is in Kimco or within any of the commercial landlords in Pacifica?
No, we do not.
Mayor Irvin, those were going to be my observations.
Oh, okay.
Why don't you let me do that?
Form it like a question.
Heck with that. So Saturday, I took a walking tour of Fairmont Shopping Center and Lindemar and counted the empty stores. In Fairmont, there were 7 total. 2 were large, not as large as Lucky, but, the next size. 3 were medium and 2 were small. And the large one, for instance, one of them was the old Comcast office back in the back. At any rate, and in Lindemar, there were 5 vacancies, including Denny's. So there was Denny's and the old Hallmark store, and the other 3 were very small places back in the back by B of A. So that's it.
Thank you. And so do we have plans to also request from the other landlords in Pacifica? I don't know how many we have, and I'm just curious if we're going to be examining the other landlords and see if we are going to have them come to present to council as well, or are we just going to be asking, is that your wish just to have Kimco come and present?
My intent really is Kimco, and it was Eureka Square, but Eureka Square is filling up. So I don't, so yeah, I know Eureka Square is not Kimco. Thank you, Marianne. But it's, but to me, I was going to answer something Sue said, and I forget it. It's kind of passed me by. But no, I have no intention of like the smaller. I was hoping, and this is something the city attorney would have to answer, is can you tailor it to landowners of X amount of size or landlords of X amount of size, that type of thing. If we were to go to the ordinance, I'm sorry, now in actually sending letters,
right.
My focus was Eureka Square and Kimco.
Right.
But Eureka Square seems to be
And
full.
the intent of these letters was to try to get information in terms of what their plan is moving forward, how to reduce vacancies, how to enhance business, things like that.
Right. I mean, I checked, what's their marketing efforts to market these? Are they just sitting there and waiting for the phone to ring, or is there an active marketing plan? I mean, I'm sitting here looking at the offering brochure from when they were trying to sell it last year. And there was a lot of stuff there about how it's rented and you can up the rent. Safeway's paying 39 cents a square foot, you know, and that kind of stuff. And so I'm just looking at trying, and then the asking price was best offer. So if we all want to get our Irish together, I guess we can buy Lindemar.
And then, so I know that Kimco is one of the largest real estate commercial property owners in America. And so I was just wondering who this is addressed to?
I sent the addresses to Lori, and I think this is a regional manager?
I believe so.
Yeah, the regional manager of Kimco for this area. We're bypassing Nicole, who everybody knows Nicole's name because she's on every empty storefront. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see, I know you had your light on. Did you want to say anything else? Okay. Did I want anything else?
Still on question.
Want to go to the public?
Right. Yeah, if I didn't have any other questions, I just was making sure. So I do have a couple cards from the public, and I'll go ahead and invite you to come up and speak. The first speaker is Bart Willoughby, followed by Paul Stewart, and then Tiger Jazz.
Well, as you know, Kimco's probably one of the regional controllers of most of the commercial property around here, Westlake, Metro Center, Fairmount Shopping Center, and Lindemar. And the problem that I've had dealing with Kimco is they don't like to negotiate. They don't like small businesses. They don't want small businesses around. They want larger businesses that they can get a percentage from. And basically what they've done is they've pretty much have upped the rent for most all of the small businesses so that it becomes almost impossible to sustain having a profitable business. Now, I tried to sell the Fairmount Business and Mail Center for 5 years. Right after Pacifica sold the shopping center to Kimco, I knew that there was going to be a problem. And every time that I had a buyer, they backed out because of Kimco. Kimco doesn't want to negotiate. I couldn't even get a lease from Kimco, a sample lease, to show a potential buyer that this is what you're up against. So the whole point is that Kimco is telling me, well, we're not into vacancies, but we don't have to tell you what we're going to do. So I can tell you that's probably what you're going to expect from these people, you know. But I do want to say this, that I ran that business at Fairmont, and I had 900 customers a month pay their PG&E bill. And I know that all of the owners of the businesses paid their PG&E bills there. They're all struggling. They're all struggling. So this is something that we need to really address, because it comes down to basically everybody's pocketbook. If the rents are high, obviously the goods and services are going to be more expensive. And that's going to be a problem. And I'm going to tell you now, be ready, because there's going to be 4 more businesses in Fairmont fail between now and July.
Thank you. Paul, I see that you actually meant to speak on item number 7. Would you like to wait until then? Okay. And Tiger Jazz?
Good evening, Council. Tiger Jazz Twirls Big Stick. I just wanted to echo the concern. As somebody who works in the Lindemar Shopping Center, as I'm listening to this, what's occurring to me is, as I'm going to lunch and talking to, at Palm City and talking to the people serving me, they're telling me, well, the rent's going up, so that means prices go up, which means business potentially goes down. I work in that shopping center every day. I see those vacancies. Sometimes it goes by years at a stretch. The place where Hallmark used to be still hasn't filled. And just what occurs to me on a regular basis, and not knowing what Kimco has in mind, maybe fiscally it's better for them somehow that I don't understand. But the common sense thing that it keeps occurring to me is, well, okay, a lot of the businesses in that shopping center, not just Palm City, but a lot of them, either are going out of business because the rent was raised and is now too high for them, or they're telling me that, it's affecting their business because rent goes up, so prices go up. So if you're pricing the people with the businesses out of the area and then not getting people in to fill those slots, you're then not making money. So just every day I go there wondering, okay, here's empty spaces, and they're clearly not filling them. Why not lower the rent a little bit so that you get money in your pocketbook, so that we get businesses in our area and jobs and more money for everybody involved instead of money for nobody involved? And just as a layperson working there every day, seeing that, that's this concern and frustration in my head, for whatever that's worth. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I have no more cards on this item, so we'll bring it back to council. Mayor Pro Tem Degree?
Well, yeah, if I may, I'd still like to reiterate that I think it's well worth doing it. The question is, why not wait for Economic Development Committee or goal setting? Goal setting is right around the corner. The problem is that for Fairmont, for example, I do know that Firestone, for example, which has served this community a long time, so I know of that one, has been on the edge for 4 years, and so they've managed to hang in there for 4 years. I was in there getting my tires fixed less than 3 months ago, and they were still on the telephone, very frustrated, because they want to stay, they're local people, they want to stay and they want to keep serving this community, and it's at the point, so they might very well be one of those that is gone by July. Denny's has been there a long time, so the concept of healthy competition is certainly not one to avoid or sneer at, but if a building stays empty, as so many of them have in the 2 Kimco areas, that doesn't seem to verify the notion that it's about the market bears, because it's empty. So going back again to why now, because now's the time. We really don't have much time to waste to at least try to get them, to invite them. And I tried to word it in such a manner that they had the option of coming and sit and talking to us, or a little more pressure from our point of view might be that they come and present to us. They may definitely want to avoid that. But I think a little bit of soft pushing to empower ourselves as a community, I really think now is a very good time. I don't see the great harm. What are they going to do, get angry with us? at least we have an opportunity to save a few more long-time businesses that have served us well. And that's one of our goals, is to show respect and support for our local businesses. And so how do we do that? This is one way to do it. Also, I don't know if everybody realizes that Kimco is a stock. Anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Neihardt?
Yeah, I don't object in any way, shape, or form with working with economic development. If you recall that Eureka Square was nearing, I mean, except for Oceana, it was almost empty, Oceana Market. So, but that took a number of people, including the city, and some sit-downs, and some talking, and some conversation, and, you know, working with what was available and what's walking distance, working with some of the shop owners, having that group work together with the people that were managing the particular shopping center. I never think it's just one thing, and it's a very easy thing to, in some ways, focus on rent or focus on a particular answer. But then I look at, you mentioned Westlake. Westlake was falling apart at one point, absolutely empty, and now it's thriving, and you can't get in the parking lot. And that's a Chemco property also. So's Southgate, so's many. I mean, I looked up the amount that they run in San Mateo County, and it's kind of stunning. So I don't know if this is the best way. That's my issue with it. I would like to see us, maybe as a city, have those meetings, work with them, talk with them, see what else can happen. We can start that, as far as I'm concerned, tomorrow, if you have the staff and the bandwidth to do it. That's my big problem here. We can invite them, but if we don't have the staff to follow up and do the work, we don't have a planning director, we have an acting right now, no offense to Lee, but we have an acting. That means we're basically with a person that's doing two jobs. We're just starting to get staff back in City Hall. We've got boatloads of things to do that are priorities along with this. I think it is important, but I think it takes a systematic effort, much like working with Eureka Square and working with some key shop owners like Vasu in Eureka Square really helped turn that around. So inviting someone to have a meeting at City Hall makes a whole lot more sense to me than asking them to come to council and potentially get harangued. I don't know, why would they come?
Did you have any comments? Okay. Again, I agree with Councilmember Neihardt that I have no problem with. And in fact, I think it would be very, very interesting, and we're all curious about what their intent is and what their vision is and their 5-year plan and all of those things. But I think it's you know, kind of being, I like the fact that we have an economic development manager coming, and this could be a relationship building. Maybe we can have the economic development manager or the city manager reach out to have some sort of collaborative meeting and build upon a relationship so they understand our needs, we understand their needs, we figure out what they want to do, and then staff can bring back a report. My other concern is that right now, we don't have a lot of information. I don't know what our vacancy rates are. It seems like they've actually gone down in the past couple years. I don't know what's going on with Denny's. I know I've heard a variety of different rumors about what's going on with Denny's, but I really couldn't tell anybody, you know, if they have a legitimate reason that Denny's is no longer there or they have another tenant. I just don't know. So I don't think it's necessarily fair to assume that they have bad intentions. So for me, what I would really, and again, I really want to thank Councilmember O'Neill for thinking about this and bringing it up to the surface, because last year at the goal-setting session, this wasn't something that had been talked about. And again, I really do get concerned as well with priorities and what our implementation rate is of all these goals that we have, and then new things come along and they get put above other things, and we have very few staff to work on this, but we don't have a lot of information. I'm always wondering, why do we have vacancies? Do we have vacancies because we have landlords that are charging too much money, or do we have vacancies because there's a little tiny corner store in the back of a parking area where it's not attractive to businesses? And, so I get worried about those kind of things. I think it's just important to do the homework and find out all this information, so I think that's great. And I don't, but I like the idea of the city manager reaching out maybe with the economic development manager and trying to build a relationship to find out more information about what their intent is. So, I don't know. Councilmember Keener.
So I have a proposed motion that I'd like to read.
Okay.
So I'm not actually making the motion, I'm just reading it to see what the rest of you think.
Sure.
And it is very simple: to direct the city manager to contact Kimco and find out their plans and report back to us.
Much better.
I will adopt your proposal on. He said he wasn't presenting it, so I'll present it.
So I'll make a motion.
Make it.
Okay. I move that we direct the city manager, oops, wait a minute.
He has a light on, do you realize that?
Yeah, after John, I was going to have Mike.
I didn't see it.
Well, all of a
sorry.
sudden you were making motions and adopting them, see, so that's why.
All
I
right.
was- Okay. Don't want to cut John off.
Okay,
Oh,
no, he's finished.
You're done? Okay. Well, I don't know, sometimes things become very complicated. I just wanted to send a letter out to Kimco, not solve all the problems in the Middle East. We can look for every excuse in the book not to do something, okay? And I just think a letter is more effective than a phone call, because it's a piece of paper, tactile, people get it, it's looked at, and, at least a courtesy of a response by another letter. Well, a phone message is put on a pad and maybe never returned. So I'm not like steadfast to have my letter. This one from Sue would suffice, or if the city manager doesn't like mine, wants to do something else, that's fine. But I would like clarification from John as to what do you mean by contact?
Yeah. I purposely left that vague.
Well, it's vague as
Yeah, so it could be either a phone call or a letter. Yeah.
Right, it's kind of vague, and I think, if we want to make a point, and, I'll be honest with you, I'm expecting it would be surprised if Kimco was to come here. And you know what? I feel, when you're negotiating with somebody, you make them proposition and they counter back. And if we offer them to come here and, sit at that table, make their presentation, that's fine. But if they would rather meet individually with the city manager or the mayor, that's fine also. Economic development director, I think this would be starting to open the door for when he or she starts. That's a thought, but I could support your thing if you put writing instead of contact.
Okay, I'll change it. Yes. I move that we direct the city manager to write Kimco and find out their plans and report back to us.
I'll second.
Okay, did we have any other comments that anybody wanted to make?
Maybe one comment. Do you want to let the city manager compose a letter, or did you want one of these? I'm open to either one.
I want to let the city manager compose the letter.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
I just wanted to make a comment about one thing, the assertion that a letter is better or more likely to be answered is an assertion based on I'm not sure what, because the thing that's more likely to be answered is building relationships, and that's an in-person contact. And, you know, there's tons of evidence to show that in a bunch of different avenues. So I'm not 100% sure why we're wedded to just this process, and the way we're doing this bothers me immensely. But the cause is not a bad one. I think it should have gone through Economic Development Committee. I think it should have come out of that committee, just like working with Eureka Square. I think people from the committee could have worked with that, and I still, you know, I think that process is already in place, and I'm not 100% sure why we're subverting it. So that's why I'll be voting against this. Just saying.
And, oh, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to say something about the Eureka Square thing. Maybe I don't know all that you know, but I do feel that from what I do know regarding Eureka Square, one person actually put a lot of personal energy in, and that was Vasu.
That's right.
So it wasn't totally the same. So I may not know all that you know, so.
And so I just want to reiterate so I understand what the motion is. The motion is simply to have the city manager write a letter or make a phone call to Kimco to reach out and ask if they'd like to have a conversation. After that conversation, they'll report back to staff on what they found out.
With the exception that it is just, the initial contact is by a written letter.
Can it be if...
as requested by Councilmember O'Neill.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
All right, did you...
I would vote for the phone call.
Okay, then I would like this to try to be unanimous with the council. So if you're as a second, I'm willing to amend the motion to contact by phone, if that's okay with John. He made the motion.
That's fine with me.
Okay, so I'll second the amended motion then.
Okay.
City manager will just have to tough it, I guess.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, so everybody please vote. And that passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Turn the lights off.
Okay. Okay, and so our next item of considerations is item number 7, council direction on whether or not to add development of a commercial property vacancy ordinance to staff's work plan. Staff report, please.
So again, I'm just going to go over what's in my report. And before I do that, though, if you'll indulge me, I decided I would maybe like to offer a little bit about the staffing issues that have been alluded to. Councilmember Nyhart is absolutely right. I'm down 3 people in finance. That's basically half of finance. And we're backfilling with temporary folks. HR, I have a temporary person. We are recruiting for a planning director. I'm recruiting for an economic development manager. I've got an interim police chief who, by the way, is doing a fabulous job. But it is right now, we are going through sort of a time of transition. And it does make taking on other things even more challenging. I also thought I would mention to you that the interviews for both the planning director and the economic development manager are scheduled for the end of February. So that's progress. And we should have somebody here in the next 2 months. So hooray. So this item also is something that Councilmember O'Neill brought to my attention and asked. Actually, he mentioned it at the November 24th City Council meeting. And as you know, when council members do bring up things, I do write them down. I have a method for tracking them, and then I do bring them back to you when we are able to put them into the queue and get them ready. In this case, I mentioned that I thought this would be a good thing to wait for the economic development manager to take on, again, because we are short-staffed. And that would probably be in April. He requested that it come forward in this forum and that the council have a chance to talk about it based on some information he has available. My preference, and what you'll see from me in the future when we are fully staffed, is I do prefer to give you at least something to have as discussions. So vacancy rates, other information to help you have a more fulsome conversation about taking on something and adding it to the work plan. And you also see in there, I note the council rules, and I just want to say again that I apologize if somehow that it came across in a way I did not intend, because obviously Councilmember O'Neill requested this some time ago. So with that, I think I'll wrap up and let Councilmember O'Neill offer whatever comments he'd like to. Thank you.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Okay, now the purpose, the reason I asked for this to come now is just so that we can get council direction for when the economic development person is hired, that he or she knows this is a priority for the council. I didn't expect really to have a vacancy ordinance, in a couple weeks or something like that. I was hoping that we would be able to tell the economic development director that this is a priority, that we would like to fill the vacancies here and move forward. And so that was my intent. I've waited since November, so I'm not trying to shove it down anybody's throat, but I would like, the council to basically say, and if you feel it needs to go to Economic Development Committee, or I know there's a suggestion here to have some stakeholders have a committee, I'm very open to any sort of amendments or changes, but my intent was just to have something for the new economic development person to know the direction and the seriousness the council is taking for economic development.
Do any council members have questions? Councilmember Keener?
Yeah. So do you envision this ordinance just applying to commercial properties or commercial and residential?
Commercial only. I did drive by Spanky's, and I was almost wondering, do we want to look at blight? I know, if I remember correctly, Spanky's, the site of Spanky's has applied for a hotel, and if they're going to demolish the building, why shouldn't the building be demolished now? Because in looking and researching this, there are quite a few cities that you're allowed to have plywood X amount of months, and then you have to put in those iron gates over your windows because they're more attractive. But I kind of think an empty lot is probably more attractive than Spanky's at this point. So I just, it's kind of to lead into a broader discussion, so that when, Lori, the city manager, interviews for the economic development person, there's some sense for her to know what would we like this person to look at? Blight, like Spanky's, vacancies, working with Kimco, whatever, just so that this person can hit the ground running. And no, I am not looking at residential rent control or residential blight.
Okay, I'm not sure which light was on first here. Mayor Pro Tem Degree?
Well, that was one of my questions, similar to John's, was in the light of the last conversation on number 7, and you've kind of answered it. It's like, would you prefer this to go to the goal setting, or to wait for the economic development person, or even to the economic development committee?
I'm very happy to have it to the pleasure of council. If you want to discuss it at the goal setting where we have more, I don't know, maybe a little bit more comfortable setting, or if you want to have it go to the Economic Development Committee, or, as was suggested here, a stakeholder meeting, fine. I just wanted to get the conversation started, is my goal.
Councilmember Neihardt?
I'm just a little bit confused by this discussion, and that's that I did a bunch of looking at vacancy ordinances, and vacancy ordinances, interestingly enough, there's several papers that have actually researched them, and they don't correlate with filling vacancies. They correlate with getting rid of blight and how blight is managed. So I'm kind of curious which one we're doing, and is it a focus on getting vacant, which has been a priority since we reestablished the Economic Development Committee, and I certainly thought we had it in our last strategic goal-setting session, and that's why we want the economic development quarter. So I sort of feel like we're on that path as fast as our staff power can let us go, given how much we've had to rebuild. So I'm trying to figure out which way this is actually going and which kind of ordinance it is.
I'm very open if the council would like it to kind of look at a blight ordinance. That's something. I mean, I think right now you have the south entrance of Pacifica has an empty restaurant there. Okay, and I know I didn't get a chance to check with planning, but as of 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was no applicant to anybody applying to go in there. Okay, I guess we do have somebody going in the old KFC, but so the south entrance of Pacifica, and you can see Spanky's from the freeway, and you see a boarded up wall of a building that, if the hotel is approved, and I don't know what the status of that is, why not just bulldoze the building now? Okay, because it's going to be removed anyhow. So I'm looking at if the council wants to have it as a blight or ordinance or explore that, if they want to refer to economic development to look at it for blight or vacancy ordinance, that's fine. But I just think, I will give Kimco credit in the buildings are maintained. Okay, other than visual blight of no businesses in there, the Kimco, does maintain the buildings. But I'm concerned that what powers or incentives can the city do to try to get Kimco to rent the places? That's all. Because we are still providing police and fire, okay? And it's, again, just kind of like reiterate what I said before, loss of job opportunities, loss of income, the multiplier effect of paychecks are all, the lack of some items in shopping here that people have to go over the hill for. So that's my concern. And I'm very happy to hear, what the other council members are thinking about it. So I'm not dead set in concrete for any of this. I wanted just to promote the discussion. And if it leads down that path, so be it. If it doesn't, that's fine too.
Councilmember Keener?
Yeah, I just have one more brief question, and that is, do you envision a cutoff in terms of size for the vacancies? Well, I'm only one of 5, so $5 and my vote will get me across the Bay Bridge. I envision, again, I'm kind of like more focused on the shopping centers because that's where people tend to congregate and people tend to look at to measure, okay, what's in this town, and they go there for lunch or whatever. So I'm more focused on the shopping centers, commercial, not residential, no rent control. And after looking at Spanky's, I was going to throw that in the mix of, do we want to look at blight like that?
You have cards. Oh, we're still at questions.
Oh, yeah, are you going to say anything?
I don't have a question.
Okay. I just had a couple questions. So you're thinking of 2 different potential ordinances, a blight ordinance and then something to get other, I'm just trying to think this through and what kind of vacancy ordinance that you would like to see. For instance, if a store doesn't, or if a commercial landlord doesn't get their store rented out in a certain period of time, then they would, have to pay a fee, or what are we looking at doing?
I do know San Francisco just enacted a vacancy control ordinance, and what they did is when the property is vacant, you register it with the city. If it's still vacant 1 year later, you pay $10,000 to the city of San Francisco. So that's their method. Is that our method if we choose to do this? I don't know. I mean, I'm also very willing to sit and work with, if a business is struggling, put them in contact with SCORE, the that retired executives to help businesses thing. So I'm very open, very flexible. I just, the blight, again, I was driving by Spanky's
Right,
and
that's
looked at that.
good example,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I mean, that's an egregious example, I
I'm
think.
curious, do we have blight ordinances in Pacifica, things that cover?
I'm picking up on Councilmember Nyhart's nodding. I don't know personally. We can certainly find out for you and report back.
That'd be a good piece of
I actually looked
information.
it up.
Did you? Okay.
It's pretty spelled out, the nuisance piece of it.
Right.
And I had a question. One of the things that went through my head, just thinking this through, is, so I previously said that Kimco's one of the largest commercial shopping center owners in the nation. And I'm wondering, is there any issue to worry about with liability? For instance, all they would have to do is attempt to, take us to court over something like this. And I would wonder how that would work, and if that's ever been an issue, or if that's something we should.
Well, that's something that I would have to look into. I personally have not drafted a commercial vacancy ordinance, so this is new to me as well. So I would have to, that's one of the things that we would have to do some legal research on to see what the scopes and parameter of an ordinance like this would be.
Right, and of course, it would be, interesting to see what other cities in the county or in the nearby, in the region, have a vacancy ordinance and what kind of vacancy ordinance it is. And, just trying to research any unintended consequences or things like that. So those would be my concerns and my questions.
Well, I didn't really expect, yay or nay tonight. I figured this, like I said in the thing, it is direction to staff, and if we wanted to proceed, what would be the method? Economic development, the special committee that someone suggested. Do we want to look at Mary Ann, do you happen to know in the blight ordinance, what's the trigger?
No, there's a whole list of things that are considered nuisance and blight, and it's our code enforcement officer that would be following up on those things. And it's the weeds, it's the graffiti, it's all the things that are the nexus for a vacancy ordinance, as these vacancy registrations are about. The San Francisco one I looked up, San Bruno, and South City all have them, but the nexus for charging that fee is really about blight and about the impact of vacant shops and on a neighborhood in terms of somebody who's homeless entering it, somebody who's not maintaining it or protecting it. You mentioned the plywood, that's certainly in there. And they come in different forms across the country. But the issue becomes, are you wanting to focus on economic development, or are you wanting to focus on a vacancy ordinance that is really all we can do is vacancy registration, and then we charge a fee in like a year if it's been empty, but the nexus for that fee is about the blight and the impact of a empty building. You don't know. I have a wonderful little data thing about all the little sites that have it. I've done some look.
Well, but I do think Councilmember Nyhart is correct with regard to the blight nuisances is actually one factor in our nuisance ordinance that code enforcement can go after in terms of visual blight. But we don't have a specific visual blight ordinance, which some jurisdictions do have. That's targeted solely to visual blight.
Okay.
No other questions from council? So I have one card on this item from Paul Stewart.
Mayor Irvin and Council, my name is Paul Stewart. I'm the Government Affairs Director for the San Mateo County Association of Realtors. Before I get to my formal comments, I can answer your question. When you look at a blight ordinance, which I have dealt with, I also used to be the Government Affairs Director for the Santa Clara County Association of Realtors. the two triggers are typically what is defined by the municipality as a public nuisance, and number two, because it's a blight ordinance, the economic feasibility of the property being looked at, whether it is a 1,000 square foot coffee shop or a 75,000 square foot Walmart. It's the economic feasibility. There's a beginning point. We are concerned with the proposal to explore a vacancy ordinance, typically because local government, and I'm not saying this will happen in Pacifica, but local government that I've dealt with before and have heard from others in the real estate industry tend to justify them with exorbitant registration fees. It becomes a moneymaker, unwarranted property inspections, and it does open the door, in all due respect to Councilmember O'Neill, to the potential for commercial rent control. The discussion often pops up as it goes through the process. We feel, and Councilmember O'Neill has mentioned it in his comments, that the council is better served to set this aside, or if nothing else, put it on your goal-setting agenda or before the Economic Development Committee, but also schedule a stakeholder meeting with SAMCAR, with the Chamber of Commerce, I don't know, Kimco, but definitely also include the lenders. Because in the other cities that I've looked at, and it's Sacramento, Stockton, Fairfield, Chicago, San Francisco, Oakland, they all have a vacancy registration ordinance, South City. It is the lender that oftentimes is legally responsible based on how that ordinance is drafted to move in and take care of the vacancy issue for that property, whether it be, in some cases, and I know this is not where Councilmember O'Neill is going, in some cases it's residential blight. That's more the Chicago's, Detroits of the world, if you will. But in all cases, it has to do with vacant properties, whether it's a 1,000 square foot coffee shop or something larger. So we would recommend that the council consider setting this aside for right now, and obviously your choice, to refer to the Economic Development Committee or to your goal setting, but more importantly, also include in your action a meeting with the stakeholders. We're not naive here. There is an 800-pound gorilla over here that just happened to be the subject of the previous item. This creates a hammer if they don't want to do what they're supposed to be doing. However, the thing to remember is when you create that hammer, it's citywide.
That's right.
So if somebody across the street over here has a problem with a vacancy, it's not the shopping centers, though I recognize that's the focus of Councilmember O'Neill. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions? I think no. Thank you. Seeing that I have no more cards, I'm going to bring it back to council. Councilmember Neihardt.
I just wanted to comment one more thing. There's actually a fairly significant database for these ordinances. And when you look at it, it apparently made a ton of sense to a lot of, 44 cities in California in 2008. But 2008, 2009 were height of a lot of foreclosures, and we've dropped off to like no new registrations by 2012. And actually, they've been challenged in a number of sectors for exactly some of the things that Mr. Stewart was alluding to. So I would be if we choose to in any way go forward on this, I would want a very detailed legal analysis, which there's a cost with. I would also want to look at really the city's capacity in terms of staff and what the real bang for the buck is on this. Does it make sense? Because also, as pointed out, you may have a particular problem with a particular landlord right now. We had it with a different landlord previously. That landlord, is that the best way to go about this when it applies across the board? And if you want to take our our current ordinance about, for lack of a better term, blight, public nuisances, et cetera, and spiff that up or expand it, I'm fine with that, because Spanky's is the one place I could see. We have oscillated empty stores in different parts of town for different reasons, and I'm not 100% sure exactly what the cause is. It's multiple, and these ordinances are incredibly complex, as several of the analyses that I looked at have pointed out. So unintended consequences, I would warrant caution.
Any other comments? Mayor Pro Tem DeGree?
I really appreciate hearing about lenders. That makes a lot of sense, and definitely stakeholders. So in the light of the conversation for number 7, which seems to me is very much connected to this, is that I really appreciate, number 1, I really appreciate the fact that you put this on so we could discuss. I really like the fact that we're discussing. And so I would suggest that deferring action until the council's goal setting might be in order, because the goal setting, the question is, how does the goal setting and the economic development and the new person coming on staff, all of those need to be interconnected somehow, so I'm assuming that that will be through the goal setting. So that would be my preference in going in that route at this point.
Any other comments?
That sounds good to me.
Council Member O'Neill?
I have no problem with that at all. Like I said from the very beginning, I want to promote the discussion and looking at it, is it an option for the city? Because I think, basically I'm tired of empty storefronts.
Definitely good intentions, and I will appreciate discussing it at the goal setting session if that's the path that we choose to go. And it was I agree with Mayor Pro Tem DeGree, this is a good conversation and it's important to have. And sometimes these are the only ways we get to have these conversations. So thank you for bringing it forward. And does anybody have nobody wants to make a motion, or we're just...
Is that enough direction? I guess the question is?
Yeah. Is that enough direction? Yes. Okay. All right, thanks, everybody. It's a good conversation. And that leads us to our last agenda item, item 8, adoption of resolution of support to participate in a feasibility study of a community choice aggregation program for San Mateo County and authorization to release Pacifica electrical usage load data. Staff report, please.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. As you're already aware from Councilmember Keener's earlier comments, the County of San Mateo has initiated an effort to assess creation of a Community Choice Aggregation, or CCA, program. Supervisors Groom and Pine are leading the effort with staff support from the county's Office of Sustainability. And for those that weren't tuned in earlier in the meeting, Community Choice Aggregation is a method of bundling consumer demand for electricity across several jurisdictions with the goal of creating an economy of scale that allows the purchase of electricity from sources that produce fewer greenhouse gas emissions than traditional utility providers such as PG&E. The Office of Sustainability has conducted early outreach to cities and towns in San Mateo County and needs to know which local governments are interested in pursuing CCA. The next step is to conduct a feasibility and technical study to determine whether sufficient demand exists and what the costs will be to establish a CCA program. The Board of Supervisors will consider funding a feasibility and technical study at its meeting on February 24th. In order to show Pacifica's support for the early analysis required to establish a community choice aggregation program, the Office of Sustainability has asked San Mateo County cities and towns to pass resolutions of support to that effect. It has also asked cities and towns to authorize PG&E to release electricity load data for their customers. Local government approval is necessary to release the usage data, since it will be more finely detailed than the data PG&E typically releases. I need to clarify one point made in the staff report regarding personally identifiable information. As far as I am aware, the data will not include customer names or addresses, which is terrific. However, PG&E will release data for customer categories with fewer than 15 customers, or where any one customer's usage is more than 15% of the total usage in a particular category. So what that means is this is likely to impact only commercial and industrial customers, given the large residential customer base within the city. While all residential customers fall within a single category, commercial and industrial usage categories are split among small, medium, and large users. So as a result, it may be possible to identify, based on usage and the limited commercial and industrial base in the city, particular consumers. Normally, PG&E would combine any small customer grouping into another group to preserve confidentiality. However, due to the level of detail needed to assess CCA feasibility, PG&E will release this information with local government approval. The only anticipated users of Pacifica's load data are county staff and its consultants. As a result, the potential for misuse or personal information being disclosed is limited, and all users of the data must sign non-disclosure agreements to preserve confidentiality. So with that clarification, it's staff's recommendation that the City Council adopt the resolution expressing the city's interest in community choice aggregation, its willingness to participate in the feasibility and technical studies for San Mateo County, and authorizing PG&E to release electricity load data for all customer types within Pacifica.
Thank you very much for that report. And we have a couple questions here, so we'll start with Councilmember Nyhart.
I don't have as much of a question as a statement. I just want you to verify, and that is that basically going in on this, one of the amazing things that we are offered again in San Mateo County is that the county is willing to take any upfront costs on this opportunity to really get clean, reduced green energy sources and make that available to customers in a much more cost-effective way. So they're taking the risk. If you think of any risk whatsoever is here, they'll get paid back out of the sales, but they're taking the risk, correct?
Yeah, that's the plan currently. We'll find out after the meeting of February 24th whether the county
whether they
votes
decide to do
fund
it or not based on the feasibility study.
That's the intention, and as the other CCAs in Marin and Sonoma counties have done, those initial upfront costs have been paid back with early revenues from the customer fees.
Exactly. I'm excited. I'm ready to make a motion.
Great. Any other questions? Sure. Mayor Pro Tem DeGree.
I just want to make sure I heard you. This will not cover any residents, right? Did I hear you say that?
Well, to be clear, the load data will include residential customers, but the risk of any personally identifiable information being gleaned from the residential usage is much lower to non-existent based on the size of the customer base. So all residential usage will be aggregated into residential, whereas commercial and industrial usage will be aggregated into small, medium, and large groupings, making it much easier, depending on the number of users in the category, to identify who those are.
Thank you.
I just had a quick question. So it doesn't sound like it's going to take very much staff time, but I'd like to hear how much staff time would this take? What do they have to do?
Sure. So at this point, the bulk of the staff time has already been provided in terms of preparing the resolution in the staff report. So for this phase, there's essentially no more other than taking a photocopy of this resolution and forwarding it to the Office of Sustainability. As far as future phases, I can't make a definitive statement.
Great. But the promise is that, potentially we can experience more lower greenhouse gas emissions and even potentially lower utility costs as well.
That's been the experience in Sonoma and Marin counties, and it's presumed to be the case in San Mateo County, but the usage here is different than in any other county, and so that's the purpose of the technical and feasibility studies, to determine what would the financial and greenhouse gas emissions reductions look like here based on San Mateo County's profile.
And can you just comment on one thing? I'm curious how it affects people that already have solar or another form of renewable energy, if you can comment on that.
Sure. So again, we shouldn't get into too many specifics about how a future program in San Mateo County might be structured, but what Marin and Sonoma counties have been able to do since they've created this new electricity provider model is have local control of innovative programs. So they've been able to adopt feed-in tariffs for people with solar panels on their homes or businesses, to where any excess electricity generated is fed back into the grid at a retail rate. So if that's feasible and technical in San Mateo County, that's one of the options that the overseeing authority would be able to enact.
Great, thank you very much. Anybody else have a question?
I have a comment.
Oh, okay. I'm going to bring it out to the public, and then I'll bring it back. And I don't have any cards from the public, so if somebody would like to, yeah, just get out a card, and yeah, it's Paul Stewart.
You can add it to the card.
I'm going to add it to I'll add it to the card he has.
I shall fill out a card following my comments. Mayor Irvin, members of the council, my name is Paul Stewart, representing the San Mateo County Association of Realtors. We would urge the council in all due haste to adopt this staff recommendation. You may not be aware, but at the invitation of Supervisor Dave Pine, SAMCAR is one of the other groups that is involved in the CCA effort. In fact, we started a dialogue about this over a year ago with Foster City, when they were looking at a solar energy coalition. This is now morphed into the CCA. As Councilmember O'Neill may be aware, we are exploring some potential funding, and I could certainly be told no, very loudly, through our National Association of Realtors, as part of getting information out to energy conservation to homeowners. Now, granted, the CCA tends to go a little more towards the non-residential, but that information is still there and can be digested and can be used, and that information gotten out through, realtors, among others, to homeowners about low-cost ways that they can upgrade their homes for solar, or they can upgrade their homes for energy retrofits, whether it be major retrofit. As you know, Energy Watch California will give you, I believe, up to $7,500 for a major retrofit, or a minor retrofit. I believe they give you up to $1,000 for that. So we're just trying to lend our recommendation to staff's recommendation on this. If you have any questions, be happy to answer them, because I'm also the person who's serving on the CCA board for the private sector. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, and seeing that I have no more cards, I'll bring it back to council. And Councilmember Keener.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks to Christian for a really good report. And I'd just like to say that several people who were at the CCA workshop, Dinah Verby, Celeste Languille, and Carlos Davidson, who could not be here tonight, emailed me and wanted to offer their support as well. And Cynthia Kaufman, too. So.
Thank you. Councilmember Neihardt.
Well, I just wanted to add that from the time I heard this presented at the City and County Association of Governments, I was so excited because Marin had actually done an amazing job with this. And I just wanted to share one little piece of information. You know, we didn't put a lot of solar credits in our climate action plan. And one of our providers in town, I'll leave them nameless, they've reached 200 solar installations at this point in time, just now in Pacifica, and there are many more people installing, but this happens to be the one that I've used. And already their estimates for GHG emissions for reduction per year in terms of metric tons is 570. Which is really striking when you think about the amount of impact we can have with alternative forms of energy. So I'm totally ready to make the motion whenever you want to.
Any other comments? Yeah, total win-win situation, it sounds like. I'm looking forward to getting the results of the study.
Great. So let's move to adopt the resolution supporting the City of Pacifica's participation in a feasibility study of the Community Choice Aggregation Program for San Mateo County and authorizing release by Pacifica Gas and Electric of Pacifica's electric usage load data.
Do I have a second?
Yeah, second.
Oh, I thought John was going to say. That's fine. He did the work.
Okay, let's take a vote. And that passes 5-0. Great.
And just as a follow-up, I really want to thank Councilmember Keener for getting people together and being able to go to that workshop when, we just can't do it during the day. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. And with that, I adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Oh, we're going to be clean, too.
Yep.